Greetings all, Mark C. here from RadicalU.com. That's RadicalU.com. Where together we are waking up the world. Okay, got a confession to make. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Well, not quite that, but close. I've been laying off videos for the past several weeks because I've had one of those classic dark nights of the soul. Dark night for me, and possibly for you, goes something like this. You're bumping along, getting through the day, and then seemingly out of nowhere comes a very dark but familiar thought, a familiar voice that whispers or hisses, "Who do you think you are? You're a fraud. Look at you trying to act all spiritual and shit, but I know who you really are. Why don't you just stay in your lane? Or better yet, why don't you just hide? Who the hell wants to hear your drivel anyway?" This latest round of me bashing was particularly painful because, as one who aspires to be a healer, I couldn't heal myself. I couldn't follow my very counsel that I was trying to impart upon others. It led to all kinds of questioning. Why was I trying to help others? Why when I couldn't help myself? Fraud alert kept on flashing through my head. So I started to hide in a soup of self-loathing. Not content, though, just to keep it there, I also imagined the dark motives of others and ascribed all kinds of stories why they didn't care for me. When in this place of darkness, of course, it's just me, and that's all there is. Now, I could say to others, "Oh, it's not your fault, it's temporary, it's going to pass," but that was reserved for them. I knew in my heart, oh yeah, that I was ultimately to blame, and there was no way out. Of course, when in the midst of this dark night of the soul, there never does seem to be a way out. In fact, as you probably know, the more you try to fight it, the darkness just gets darker. And I also became very, very invested and attached to this dark place. And of course, one thing that I realized is that, and intellectually I've realized it even while I was going through it. Yeah, it's my conditioning. It really goes back to my childhood, and a little bit more on that in a moment. And I received messages, real, pretty cruel messages that I would never amount to anything. That actually was a direct quote from a teacher who said that to my parents with me standing right there. I think I was about 5 years old at the time. And now that I'm all grown up, now actually approaching the doddering stage of my life, those messages do still leave an impression. It's important to distance yourself from this pain, but let me tell you, the mind can then find all kinds of evidence to make its compelling case. Now, just to be clear, the mind is not some kind of evil entity somehow divorced from all of this. It's just trying to cope as best it can with the pain. And sometimes it's just easier and more familiar to live in the soup of self-loathing. It's something I've used very often in my life was the need to feel accepted by others. So if someone told me I'm not good enough or I'm never going to amount to anything, I would work harder. I would become the better son, the better worker, the better manager. I was a manager late in my career, and it was the culmination of managing everything else in my life. So now, why not try to manage the mess in my work life? Yet the mind, through this inner critic, it invariably does have its limitations. So what did I do? Well, first of all, a very small, almost imperceptible voice said to me, "So this is how it ends?" And then another voice whispered, familiar voice, it said, "It's real, but is it true?" At first I protested and I said, "Oh, of course it's true." Then the voice answered again, "Okay, so this is how it ends, huh?" Somehow this small voice came from a deeper part of me, and it certainly wasn't something I initially wanted to hear. But somewhere within me cut through all the self-loathing rationalizations, and it was gently coaxing me to look deeper. Language somehow fails here. And the only way I can describe this is that it was a manifestation of grace. Now, believe me, religious language is not my jam, but there's no other way for me to fashion this. So I dutifully checked various definitions of what grace was, and this one caught my fancy. It said, grace is the Hebrew word for shanan, or the Greek word for charis, meaning the state of kindness and favor towards someone, often with a focus on a benefit given to the object. Ooh, that kind of caught my eye and kind of resonated with me for sure. So the voice that was asking me, is this how it ends, was a momentary invitation. It wasn't even said in an accusing way, but it was said out of concern, dare I say, love. In itself, it wasn't a magic bullet, but something else also happened in tandem. I was approached by a very wise friend who knew I was going through a tough time and was checking in with me, and said to me, if you want to get together and talk, I'm here. Just let me know. And it took a few days, but with trepidation, I reached out. My friend is Sally Saint, and she has a wonderful website, wisewomanguide.co.uk. It's linked below. And she's also done a series of videos on healing. She's wonderful, and I must say, very wise. So I'm glad I reached out to her. Her approach was kind, and she just asked a few simple questions for me to explore the injured and traumatized child within. Curiously, this time of year, it's usually early spring, late winter, early spring, has been a very, very difficult time for me, and I can trace it back to around the time I was 8 years old. The specifics of this trauma are complex, as it was a reoccurring trauma, perpetuated by those in authority. And it was still living in my body. Now, this 8-year-old was doing its best that it could. And he would run away whenever possible. And he was doing his best to kind of keep everything safe. And as an adult, I just wanted all of this to go away. And I was unfairly asking this 8-year-old to do the job. He was exhausted. He couldn't deal with it anymore. So to retreat into self-loathing was the only solution here. So in my session with Sally, she gently asked if I could speak to this 8-year-old and ask him what he wanted to do now. And thinking back on the trauma that I had at that time, this 8-year-old just simply wanted to smash once and for all the conditions which led to this pain. Smash was the operative word here. I remember reading from author Tosha Silver about breaking things, again, within safety limits, when this stuff comes to the surface and you just have nowhere else to go. She suggested smashing coconuts. Since I live in Florida, this was an easy fix. So my 8-year-old self and I agreed for a time, made a date to go smash some coconuts. It was in a remote area. Nobody saw me, because if they did, they probably would have thought I was crazy. And so we formed this alliance, my 8-year-old self and I. And we went one fine day, it was a beautiful day, and saw a bunch of coconuts and started smashing them against the pavement. Let me tell you, it was intense, but it was one of the most cathartic things I have ever done. So the darkness, born of many years of pain, started to lift a little bit. My 8-year-old self had some wisdom here to say, we gotta put this to rest one way or another. Now, I don't claim to have it all together and everything's just peachy keen right now, but it's a process. And I have to say that the world does look a little brighter. All right. Well, are there any takeaways here? This is not a recipe for success or healing or anything like that. But these are just a few of the things that I learned that I just thought I'd share with you. In the dark night of the soul, listen, and keep listening to that small, still voice that naturally wants to be heard. And don't forget the other voice, the loud voice that's saying that you're never going to amount to anything. That needs some love too. But there is a healer that's buried beneath all of that. Now you can do things like meditate, walk in nature, just do something to shift the energy and just keep listening. Because something really wants to be birthed out of all of this and make way for something new. If and when that voice is heard, be open to it to see where it goes. Become very curious. In my case, it allowed me to reach out to a friend. It could be a friend, a coach, a therapist, just someone you trust. And explore with curiosity that inner child which did its level best to keep you safe. Talk to him or her. Ask what it needs now in this moment. It can be pretty amazing what it will request. A lot of wisdom in that little kid. At its heart, it wants to form an alliance with you. Be open to that. And keep the dialogue going with that inner kid. He or she just wants to trust you. That's all I got. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today. And if you are looking for someone to talk to, perhaps do some healing and some tapping, I am open to that. We can work with each other. We're in this together. And not that I'm going to pour my stuff onto you, but I'm a pretty good listener, and I'll listen to what you have to say, and we'll figure it out together, because together we're going to wake up this world. So thank you so much for this time. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below. That means a lot to me. And I'll talk to you in the next video, which I hope will be soon. Until then, namaste.